So thank you everyone for joining this Zoom virtually. It's exciting. I just see a pop-up. Someone's here from Germany.
Oh, wow.
My name is Rebecca Parnes, and I work for the City of Dublin in California, which is located in the Bay Area near the San Francisco Bay. And we originally were going to have this event last spring, and then we had the pandemic. And so now everyone on the Zoom gets the benefit of this presentation across the country and internationally, and I'm excited that it's happening even though it's not in person. And Anne-Marie, I'm gonna flip it to you and make you the host. Or maybe I'll give a few more minutes. If you haven't chatted where you're from, maybe chat, because it seems that once I flip you as the host, then people can't add it. Because we discovered that before.
Yeah. No, I'm laughing at the comments. Another Angelino here, West Valley. What's up? Toronto, England, Germany, East Hollywood. Rebecca, why don't you? I can share the screen. I can still share the screen.
Okay.
You'll be able to share the screen if you're the host.
Got it.
Oh, from Italy. Oh, quarantining in Detroit.
Wow.
Montreal, Toronto. Hello. Oh, my daughter is in Montreal now. She just moved there last week.
Wow. Okay.
Okay. So, all right. Well, hello. Thank you for coming. I'm gonna do a little slide presentation before we cook. So let me share my screen. And thank you for having me, Rebecca. Yeah. These are really fun to do. So, all right. So make soup, not waste. Can you see the whole? I guess the. Okay, you can see it. Okay. If there are too many windows open, you can click the little thumbnail video on your Zoom bar. On mine, it's on the right. And then it will shrink, and then you can see the whole presentation. So, all right. So, make soup, not waste. I'm going to talk about food waste today, mostly food waste. Oh, no. Sorry. It's not. Oh, so that's me, Anne-Marie Bonneau. I write the blog, The Zero Waste Chef. And I'll tell you a little bit about how that got started. So in 2011, I started reading about plastic pollution in the oceans, and I'd heard about this catamaran that was built out of something like 12,000 discarded plastic bottles and other waste materials. And these activists built it, and they sailed it from San Francisco, which is just north of where I am, to Sydney, Australia. And they wanted to raise awareness of plastic pollution. So that caught my attention. Did I mention that was 2011? So I think I did. Anyway, so that caught my attention, and started reading about plastic pollution and the effect it has on the oceans and its inhabitants, the marine life, and it's so, it's heartbreaking. So I told my older daughter, Mary Catherine, on the left here with the glasses, I said, we have to get off of plastic. I don't want to participate in this. Of course, if I'm alive, I'm going to participate, because even if you don't bring plastic into your home, it's still being produced in the supply chain. We don't see all of the stuff that goes into making the stuff that we buy. But anyway, I said I want to, get off of this plastic treadmill as much as I can. And that's my other daughter, Charlotte, on the right, who's in Montreal now. So Mary Cat said, okay. So Mary Cat was 16, Charlotte was 10, and Charlotte was like, yeah, whatever. And Mary Cat and I said, okay, we're gonna try this. And we went to the grocery store for the first time after we decided to cut the plastic. And I remember standing in the aisle, bathroom tissue aisle at Safeway, and I said to Mary Cat, how are we ever gonna do this? This is impossible. There's plastic everywhere. I can't even get a roll of bathroom tissue without plastic. But then Mary Kat started doing research, and she found Beth Terry's blog, My Plastic Free Life. She's also in the Bay Area. I mean, she was. I think she's moved now. Mary Kat did a plastic audit of all this stuff that we were throwing out. So you can see lots of yogurt cups and takeout containers, plastic cutlery, plastic wrap, packaging for frozen fruit, pasta, sugar, vinegar, snack food, lots of snacks, chips, protein bars. So now we just want to get off of the plastic, but we found cutting the plastic and doing that audit made us aware of all of our waste. And so I started paying more attention to food waste as well, which is a really big issue, and I don't think it gets the attention it deserves. So then Mary Kat started a blog, The Plastic Free Chef. My kids are both really good cooks. We're all foodies. And then she went away to school, and she found it was too hard to keep up. So there's Charlotte. Why have you done this? But Charlotte never complained too much. Now, if you have young kids and you want to start cutting all the waste, you know, plastic waste, food waste, paper, whatever, if your kids are young, it's a lot easier. Charlotte she never really complained though. She did say that though. All right, so to cut the food waste, start with shopping. So the less food you bring in, you know, the less food you're going to waste. Now, where to shop? There's a spectacular place to shop that's very close to where you live. It's inexpensive. Well, economical, let's say, economical. So the very best place to shop for food is your refrigerator. Before you go out shopping, look and see what you have on hand. If everybody did this, we'd slash a ton of food waste. So you look in your refrigerator, see what you have on hand. My refrigerator isn't usually this clean on the left here. So I have, and it has more food than this. But I like to get it kind of down, you know, so it's not overflowing with food and leftovers and things. So I have some preserved lemons and oil and dilly beans, chocolate syrup, because, you know, that's a necessity. I have some sheep's yogurt from the farmer's market, and on the middle shelf, in the middle, that's my sourdough discard. I'll talk a little bit about that. So check the fridge, check your crisper. So you want to eat the stuff first that is, you know, more perishable. So check the fridge and the crisper for what you have on hand. Now, if you grow any food, then go and see what you have out in your garden. On the left here, this was a volunteer kabocha squash that grew out of the compost. I love those. There's a tomato plant in the compost right now. And then that's a lemon tree. So my sister says I'll never move back to Canada as long as I have a lemon tree here in California. I love having a lemon tree. So that's really nice. So, you know, if you do have a yard and you grow a bit of food, go out there and see what you have. Next, check the freezer. So I freeze all sorts of food, and it's a great way to prevent food waste. You know, if you're not going to get to something, then stick it in the freezer. It doesn't have to go in there for 6 months. It can go in there for, you know, a week or even just a few days. And you can see on the left picture some of the things I freeze. The top jar, those are apple peels and cores, and I use that to make vinegar. And I can take questions about all of this stuff at the end before we start cooking. Let's see. I have lots of roasted tomatoes. Actually, in both pictures, you see lots of roasted tomatoes. This time of year, I usually buy cases of Early Girls at the farmer's market because they're a good deal. near the end of the season, and then I roast them and I freeze them, and I use those instead of canned tomatoes. I have frozen tofu. That was homemade tofu. If you freeze tofu, it gives it this really meaty, not mealy. Mealy's bad. meaty texture. It's really good. I've got broth. That's bean broth in the top right jar, and I have I have some lemon zest in a little small jar, and looks like some walnut or almond pulp from homemade nut milk, lemon curd. Anyway, I freeze all sorts of stuff. Oh, I use wide mouth jars. You can see all of these jars. Their sides are flush, so they don't have a narrow neck. I learned that the hard way. Don't freeze things in jars with narrow necks. Even though I thought I'd left enough space. That one time, when I first tried this long ago, I put liquid in a jar, and anyway, the neck snapped right off. So we've checked the refrigerator and crisper and wherever else you store vegetables, and the freezer. And then next, look at the pantry, see if you have bread, mystery grains. I always have mystery grains in the cupboard. I have some here today that I'm going to throw in the soup. Actually, they're not mystery grains this time. It's farro or farro. Don't know how to pronounce that. Okay, now, if you do that before you go shopping, see what you have on hand. And you don't have to have a big spreadsheet, unless you like to do that. I mean, I am in Silicon Valley, so people love spreadsheets here. If you want to do a spreadsheet, that's fine. But really, you can just glance at what you have on hand, and then do that before you go shopping. And the reason you want to do that. So now some scary statistics. So globally, roughly 1/3 of the food we produce goes uneaten. And that can be because the produce is ugly, and so grocery stores won't carry it. But the majority of the food waste, it occurs at the consumer level. So a larger chunk of it is us. And then restaurants and farms. Well, it's not really the farm's fault. The grocery stores won't buy the stuff. In the US, the number is even higher. It's nearly 40%. So it's as though you go to the grocery store and you buy 5 bags of groceries and you just chuck one out you don't even bring it home. Just throw it out of the cart onto the ground. So wasted food wastes a lot more than just the food. When you waste the food, you're wasting the water, the labor, the capital, the chemicals. Not that I'm saying that's, don't want a bunch of chemical pesticides, but they're using them, right? The land is cleared, it's deforested for food that we don't eat. Oh, energy. I didn't say energy. So much fossil fuel goes into producing the food and shipping it. So, and I found this really shocking, this figure. So the wasted food accounts for 8% of emissions globally. And to put that in perspective, the airline industry accounts for 2.5%. And that's from the book Drawdown. Actually, I think, yeah, the previous one's also from Drawdown. So that's a fantastic book. It's edited by Paul Hawken, and it lists the 100 top solutions to solving climate change. They came out with an update this year. It's a huge team of scientists. The #1 solution is reduced food waste in their update. Now they have, okay, I won't get into too much. They have scenario 1 and scenario 2. Scenario 1 is that we heat to a maximum 2 degrees Celsius. Scenario 2 is 1.5 degrees Celsius. The 2% seems more, 2 degrees seems more likely. But so that's the scenario under which food waste is the #1 solution. Like above, sorry, like above solar and electric cars and windmills. So that's pretty amazing. And it seems like with the fires that have been raging here and now the hurricanes that are hitting the East Coast, it may seem like, oh, you know, food waste doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but you know, eating all the food you buy really does make a difference. And it's not just us. I mean, the restaurants have to get on board and the industry also. Okay, so now that you've gone through your inventory, you're going to make a plan of what you're going to cook. So I call this meal planning light. You don't have to plan every single morsel you're going to eat for the next week or 2 weeks. But now that you've gone through the inventory, try to think of something you can make with what's on hand. So, you know, today we're going to make soup. That's the easiest thing to make. I like to make that at the end of the week. You just put in whatever you find, you know, within reason. Don't put in chocolate cake or, you know, marshmallows. But think of what you can make. Maybe you can make a frittata or, you know, chili or empanadas. You know, pastry is amazing. You can do all sorts of things. Fill pastry with all sorts of things. All right, do you need anything else to make what you came up with? So maybe you're out of onions. It's hard to make soup without onions. So, you know, put that in your grocery list. Plan a couple of other meals, 1 or 2 other meals, and you know, start with what you have on hand and then jot down what else you need. Try to think of what you can do with any leftover ingredients. So right now with the soup, I started chopping the vegetables, and I'm going to have some little bits of vegetables left over. I'm going to use that for broth. And then later I might use that broth to make a bechamel sauce to put in a pot pie. And then after I make the pot pie, I might have leftover pastry, and I might use that leftover pastry to make a little galette. So it's just on and on and on. That way you're not starting from scratch every day. Then make your shopping list. Okay, now you're gonna go shopping. If you have a farmer's market near you, the food's really fresh, and so it's gonna last longer. So I tried to go to the farmer's market. The one I used to go to is really crowded. So I started going to the one here in Sunnyvale. They've really spaced out the vendors well, and you're outside, which is nice. So bulk bins are great because you can just buy small amounts of food, and then it's not going to go bad. Now, right now, a lot of stores aren't allowing you to bring your jars. There's one near me. I can bring my jars, and that way I don't bring home packaging waste. I can take my jars and they will fill them for me. That's in Palo Alto on California Avenue, if anybody is from this area. It's called Country Sun. This place in the picture, that's in Ontario. It's in Guelph, near Toronto. It's called Goodness Me. Their drop-down bins, the ones above, the gravity bins, those ones you're still able to use, but you can't use your own bags and jars. They have paper bags though, so every place is different. And then I think, oh, whoops, I accidentally hit the button. Where was I? Oh yeah, I think that the small independents are more likely to fill your jars if you want to go bulk shopping. This is another store near me. If I can't make it to the farmer's market, they have lots of very fresh produce. So we eat a lot of vegetables. When I cut the plastic back in 2011, my diet improved instantly because I stopped buying things in packages. And that's another thing, you know, those best before dates on packages, those are just, those are suggestions. They're not regulated by the government. So companies, the food companies stamp those on their packages, and it's guidance, marketing. It's a lot of, some of it is marketing. Like there are best before dates on Doritos, and you know, that stuff has so much preservatives in it. The, you know, highly processed food, it doesn't really go bad. Anyway, so use your senses when you are buying packaged stuff. Like if it smells good and it looks good, it's probably fine. You can taste a little bit. But anyway, we eat way more vegetables than we used to, which is good. My diet, my health really improved because I improved my diet. So this is all farmers market stuff. And then there's some bulk stuff that I mentioned. And bread, you don't have to make your bread. If you follow me on social media, I make a lot of sourdough. I'm obsessed with sourdough. You can just buy it. You don't have to make the sourdough. I think there's probably some sourdough guilt out there. People seeing all of the gorgeous loaves of sourdough on social media. You can just buy the sourdough. Oh, dried beans and legumes. You know, those keep for a really long time. Although it is better to eat fresher ones. If you soak them, they cook more evenly, because if they aren't super fresh, they cook kind of unevenly. But they don't, you know, they don't go bad. Probably for really, really, really long time. Those are some of my spices. So we eat lots of beans and legumes. So this is important, how to store food. If you store it properly, it's gonna last longer. So I found some, so I'm not at home right now. This isn't my kitchen. Anyway, so I rifled through the refrigerator looking for things to put in the soup. Because before I do these things, I don't know what I'm gonna make. I don't know what is gonna go into the soup. I just look and see what I can find. So I found some really limp celery in the refrigerator here, and I stuck it in a jar of water. It hasn't perked up yet, but it will. It works really well. If you have limp lettuce, limp lettuce. You can do the same thing with limp lettuce. You can put it in cold water. That will kind of shock it and perk it up. But if you store it properly in the first place, then it's going to last longer. Asparagus, you can store in a jar on the counter and just change the water every, not even, I don't know, like 5 days, maybe a week, 5 days. It stays fresh a long time. Green onions too, you can store them that way, and you can regrow them. Just if you use your green onions and you have a little bit of the little white roots left at the bottom, you can put them in a jar of water and you'll regrow some green onions. They'll taste better and last longer if you plant them in the soil though. You can do a little pot inside. So here I have some, now ideally in a perfect world, you would go shopping every few days and just buy what you need. But most of us shop, especially now during COVID, shop weekly, maybe even less often. So a lot of stuff can be stored at room temperature, a lot of vegetables. So it can be confusing knowing what to store where. Basically, keep bananas away from everything. Keep potatoes away from onions because they give off gases and they cause each other to break down. Don't store tomatoes in the refrigerator because they go all mealy. So those are a few things. I have more on my blog. I have a big long post on how to store produce. But only buying what you need is the best. Okay, and now into how I cook. So I've changed how I cook since I started down this road. As I mentioned, I'm obsessed with sourdough bread. and fermentation, and what I like to call freestyle cooking, which is what we're going to do today. So this is earlier this year, this picture, when I was teaching in-person workshops, and hopefully I'll do that again. That's my sourdough starter, Eleanor, on the left. She turned 6 this year, and she's just flour and water. You combine them, and bacteria and yeast eat the carbohydrates and produce gases, and you get these bubbles. And the loaf on the right, that is flour, water, and salt. That's it. And it never fails to amaze me when I pull the loaf out of the oven that that's all that's in there. Because it has starter also, but the starter is flour and water. So 3 ingredients are all you need to bake bread. This is my grain mill. I like to grind up flour sometimes. This is a little hand cranked grain mill, and those are soft wheat berries, I believe, in the center, and the resulting flour. Now you don't have to do that. You don't have to go all little red hen. You don't have to buy the grains. Sorry, you don't have to grill the wheat to harvest the grains, to grind the berries, to make the flour, to bake the bread. So you can just buy the bread. But I love baking. Oh, and now when you have to feed your starter every day. So you take most of it out, and you have just a little spoonful, and then you add fresh flour and water, because it needs more food every day, or it's like a pet. It'll die if you don't feed it. So you end up with all the discard. So these are a couple of things I make with the discard, so I don't waste it, because I don't want to throw out that flour and water. Those are sourdough soft pretzels. Now those do have some store-bought yeast in them also. And then this is chocolate cake on the right, which is so easy to make, and it's vegan if you're vegan. If you're not vegan, you won't care. Like it tastes really good. So those are a couple of things that I make with the discard. Okay, fermentation. So I'm obsessed with fermentation. I probably need a what are those things? Well, anyway, intervention. I have COVID fire brain. Okay, so fermentation is a way of preserving food. Let's say, so there are a bunch of lemons from my lemon tree. If I don't do anything with them, and that's a lot of lemons. I mean, I could squeeze them and freeze the juice, and I do that with some of them. But for the long haul, I cut them, stuff them with salt, stuff them in a jar, add extra juice, and then let that sit for a few weeks. And it turns them into these, it softens the skins, and it just makes the lemons incredibly flavorful, and they'll last in my fridge for like a year. So it's the magic of fermentation. If you buy too many Napa cabbages, so those will rot on your counter in, I don't know, like a couple of weeks, and they'll be unusable. But if you transform them to kimchi, that helps preserve the cabbage, and it tastes delicious. There are some pickles, and on the right, dill pickles. Now those ones on the right, I have just started. Those ones aren't finished yet. And okay, this isn't food preservation, but it's delicious. On the left, that is hibiscus tea that I've added a ginger bug to. So it's this carbonated drink, really yummy. And on the right, that's kombucha with watermelon. Now this isn't fermentation, but it's also food preservation. That's just a dehydrated apple slice that my daughter made. Sometimes at the market, actually I think practically every week, I can get, during apple season, these not so pretty apples. They're only $1 a pound, they're organic. So these are the apples I was talking about that grocery stores don't want. These ones were too small that day that I took this picture. And so that leads to food waste. So if your farmer's market, If you have a farmer's market, they're more likely to sell the wonky vegetables because that's how vegetables grow. And this vendor, Previdelli, they always have a great deal on organic, not so pretties. So you can just eat them, or you can put them in, you know, a crumble, or make applesauce, or, you know, do whatever, pie. Okay, freestyle cooking. So that's what we're going to do today. So this is, by freestyle cooking, I mean you don't really have a recipe. You just kind of know how to make some things that are highly adaptable. So these things here I put into some soup. Those tomatoes, a couple of them look like they're getting a little soft, and I have some broth from the freezer and just a tiny bunch of parsley in the top left. Herbs, I think herbs, so this is just my theory, I don't know, I haven't seen any data, but I think herbs probably go to waste. They're probably way up there for the types of food that go to waste, because, you know, you need 3 tablespoons for a recipe, but you have to buy a whole bunch. Or you can grow them. If you grow them, that's, you won't waste them. So roasted vegetables are a great thing to make. If it's the end of the week and you look in the fridge and you find a ton of vegetables and they're gonna go bad, if you don't eat them soon, then roast them. Here I have eggplant, white onion, zucchini, and bell peppers, and that's for ratatouille. I love ratatouille. So roast vegetables, then you can put them in a frittata, you can fill a galette, you can put them in a shepherd's pie, add that layer of vegetables, you know, that a shepherd's pie calls for. You can add some broth to them in a pot, and then use a blender, sorry, like the hand blender, or put them in a regular blender, anyway, and make soup, quick soup. The roasting really brings out the flavor, so that soup is really yummy. Here are some other freestyle dishes. So on the left, I had some pureed squash on hand, and I made pasta with it. I combined flour. The recipe's on my blog. Oh, it's zerowastechef.com. Recipes on my blog. So yeah, I made pasta with some leftover puree. And then on the right, in the background, you can see some fennel. That was fennel that I roasted, and I had the fronds left over, so I made pesto. You can make pesto out of all sorts of things. And you can do a combo. You know, if you do have some basil, but not quite enough, you can throw in some other herbs, or you can throw in some spinach, throw in a little parsley. As long as it has garlic and olive oil and salt, it's hard to mess up. And some sort of nuts. I like to use walnuts because pine nuts are outrageously expensive. Chili, you can put all sorts of things in chili. That's on the left. Pizza, you can put all sorts of things on pizza. You don't have to put red sauce on pizza. You can put pesto on pizza. There's no rule saying it has to be red sauce. Oh, this is my homemade tofu. So when you make tofu, first you make soy milk, and then you congeal the soy milk to form the tofu. On the top, that is okara, which is leftover pulp from making the soy milk, and you get a ton of okara. You get so much okara. An easy way to use it up is to make granola. Just toss it in with the oats and whatever else you put in there, coconut, sunflower seeds. Another thing I do is make biscotti. So on the right, that's okara biscotti. And I'm pretty sure that, no, is that vegan? I thought it was, I'm not sure. But anyway, it was good. And used up, someone made a dent in the okara. Oh, galettes. I'm kind of obsessed with galettes. Oh, so I have a cookbook coming out. It's coming out in April 2021. I have 2 galettes in the cookbook. I have a savory one and a sweet one, and they're like pie for beginners. So a lot of people are freaked out by pastry. But the thing I love about galettes is they don't have to look perfect. You just roll out the pastry. You don't waste any of the pastry because you don't trim it. You roll out the galette, you put stuff in the center. This one I put rhubarb, I tossed in sugar and lemon juice. I forget exactly. But anyway, and then you just fold over the pastry and bake it. You can make sweet galettes, you can make savory galettes. I have one of each in the book. So they're really good and they look impressive, I think. Like I think they look beautiful. Okay, after dinner, after you clean up. Oh, that's my homemade vinegar on the left. So I use that to clean, I clean the bathroom, clean kitchen counters or pots with, along with baking soda, like if I need to scrub. Actually, baking soda often works just alone on pots with baked on stuff. So glass jars, store your leftovers in glass jars. That way, when you look in the fridge, you can see, oh, there's the whatever, leftover lasagna from the other night. Instead of an opaque jar, because by the time you remember what it is, it might be too late. So glass jars help prevent food waste. And glass containers. They don't have to be all jars. I'm obsessed with jars. Oh, now, compost. If you have food scraps and you have chickens, you can feed it to your chickens. If you have chickens, you already know this. You don't need me to tell you. But I wanted to put this picture in that my daughter sent me this week. So she's working on a farm in Ontario, Canada, and she sent me this picture of the chickens on the left, and I thought, oh, I thought it was such a beautiful picture. So I forget exactly what happened at the kitchen. Something, they overlooked some tomatoes or something. And so they had a bunch of tomato wasted. There are maybe 200 chickens on this farm. It's a small organic farm. Maybe even 300 chickens. I'll have to ask her. But anyway, the chickens eat the food scraps and then they turn them into eggs. So on the food waste hierarchy, you know, of how to dispose of food waste, feeding food scraps to animals is preferred to even compost. So here they are at the compost pile. And then what they don't eat will turn into compost. But compost is very important. So when food goes to landfill, this is another reason why food waste we should avoid it at all costs. Food waste should never go to landfill. The problem is it's compacted in landfill, and so no air can get at the food. The type of bacteria that break it down are anaerobic, and they don't need oxygen. So they excrete methane as they break down the food, and methane gas is much more potent than carbon dioxide. Over a 20-year period, it's, I believe, 84 times as potent as carbon dioxide. So, whereas if you take those same food scraps and you compost them and you produce this black gold on the right, if you spread that on crops, or in your garden, or crops if you have a farm, that'll actually draw carbon dioxide out of the air. So compost is pretty amazing. And it doesn't take long to break down. If you can't compost, if you don't have a yard, you can try vermicomposting. You get a worm bin, and it won't smell because they convert the food scraps into this, really nice, rich smelling stuff. You can't put everything in a vermicompost, but you can put a lot in there. So you can also look for something through your city. If your city has a green bin, then you can, put your food scraps in there. You can look for a community garden that accepts food scraps. Okay, So why bother? Well, we only have one home, so that's a good reason. If you're in California, then, I mean, we've had a break where I am anyway this week with the smoke, but it's just been dreadful, absolutely dreadful. So, but we can do something about it. Okay, but what's in it for me? Say you're like, all right, that all sounds fine and dandy, but I want to know what I'm going to get out of it. So taste your food. Cooking the way I cook now, I make much tastier food because I'm more creative. I use everything I have, and I've discovered all sorts of different combinations and recipes and the things that I never would have thought of before. Even the sourdough. So I've been baking bread for years, since my older daughter was a baby. I had heard something about sourdough, but I didn't really look into it. But then when I cut the plastic, I thought, well, I don't want to buy these little packets of yeast anymore. And I knew that you could somehow capture the yeast in the air. So that's how I started down that road. And yeah, the food I make now, it tastes so much better. Improved health, results may vary. As I said, my health really improved. Fermented food is really good for you. It's good for your gut, and I'm actually getting ahead of myself because I have a slide on that. It saves money. So the average household of 4 in the US throws away $1,500 worth of food every year. So if you eat all the food, you save a bundle. And confers rebel status. That might be the best reason of all. So here are some snacks. I used to buy snacks at Trader Joe's. They have really good snacks at Trader Joe's. And at the front, they have the impulse buys, and I would just grab, whatever I wanted. But then when we started down this road, if I wanted crackers, I started making crackers, which isn't a bad thing because the crackers are delicious, and now I eat fewer snacky things. Roasted chickpeas, those are really yummy. Healthy gut. So as I was saying, yeah, the research coming out about the link of our gut to our overall health is really exciting. And fermented foods promote gut health. You have to also eat a lot of fiber, so a lot of whole foods, like these vegetables. Now, I save money. A lot of people say, oh, zero waste is too expensive, and it depends on where you start from. Overall, I do save a lot of money living this way because, number one, I consume less. I don't buy stuff. I don't buy a bunch of stuff I don't need. So that saves a fortune. I use reusables. So these are some bento bags I made a few years ago. I use those for shopping. These ones are actually, they have presents in them from Christmas a couple of years ago. And didn't have to buy a gift wrap. I buy lots of secondhand stuff. I have my pants. These pants. They were, I think you can still see me, in case you're wondering, what is she doing back there? I'm assuming there's a little window and you can still see me. These pants were like $5 at the thrift shop. I have a couple of cast iron pans. I love cast iron. I got them at an estate sale. They were $2 each. And one is a vintage Griswold, which I looked up on eBay would be about, starting at $30, I'd say. Use everything up. I talked about that. Find a use for all the little bits of food. Eat lower on the food chain. So that just happened when we cut the plastic. We just started eating more beans and legumes and less dairy. And it forced me to slow down living this way. So that saves money. We're all slowed down now though. I made this slide before COVID. Oh, okay, this is the best reason. So, in 2018, I was on the front page of the Mercury. So if you're not in the Bay Area, that's a big national newspaper, the San Jose Mercury News. And of course, I knew I was going to be in the paper because the reporter came over to my home and interviewed me with the photographer. But you know, I didn't know when it was going to be in the paper. And then one morning, a friend texted me and she said, "Oh, great, right up in the Mercury." And I said, "Oh, it's in there, okay." So I read it and I thought, "Wow, yeah, that's really good." And then later in the day, I thought, "Oh, I wonder if it's in the print edition," because sometimes these things don't make it into the print edition. So I went to the grocery store and I happened to have that shirt on that I'm wearing in the picture. Went to the grocery store and I was wandering around looking for the papers, and then I saw a stack of them and I went, "Oh my God, I'm on the front page above the fold." And so I was like in shock, walking around the grocery store, and I went to the cash register and I put the paper down on the conveyor belt, and the woman in front of me, she turned around and looked over her shoulder, you know, wondering, oh, what's she buying? And she saw the paper and she swatted it with her hand. She said, "Oh, that woman." And I went, "Ooh," because I'm still in shock. And she said, "She's so extreme." She said, "I commend her for what she's doing. I read the whole article and she's so extreme." And then I started laughing. And then she said, "Oh, is that you?" And that gave me such a great story. But I'm not extreme. I eat a lot of vegetables and I ride my bike everywhere, and I don't buy stuff I don't need. And that is front page news today. And I'm happy for the press, but that's crazy. I'm, you know, how did we get here? Anyway, the times are changing though. So I tell people, take one step at a time when you want to cut down the waste. You can't do it overnight. If you try to eliminate your waste overnight, then you'll just get frustrated. So, you know, start with the soup. We're gonna do that in a few minutes. Okay, now here's a chart I made up. So food waste and packaging waste, all the waste. If you add it up, Americans waste 4.5 pounds per person per day, which every time I say that, I think, really, is that, it sounds so high. So let's say there are 10,000 of you on Zoom right now, and you all have listened to me and you've thought, okay, I'm gonna cut some of this waste that's going to landfill. And let's say 1% of you cut 100% of your waste. Because I think, you know, not very many people are gonna eliminate absolutely everything, especially when they're just starting out. So if 1% of this audience of 10,000 cuts 1% of your waste, that's about 160,000 pounds in a year. Now, if a quarter of you cut a quarter of the waste, then that's over 1 million pounds. But if everyone cuts just 10%, it's 1.6 million pounds. So you can see, like, it's more important to have everybody on board doing something than, you know, handful. Here. We don't need a handful of people doing zero waste perfectly. We need millions of people doing it imperfectly. So I put that in a blog post a couple of years ago, and someone pulled it and made a meme, and I've seen it every day since. And that's it. So thank you, City of Dublin and Rebecca, for having me. And I'm gonna unshare my screen now. Let me figure out how to do that. Ooh, stop share. Oh, look at all the people. Thank you all for coming. So should we start making the soup? I guess I can start making the soup and then take questions while I'm chopping. That seems like it'll be efficient. Okay, I'm going to, now I have to move. Okay, so here, well, everybody take a little break while I move. I have to relocate. Now we're gonna make soup. Did everybody bring vegetables? You know, you can, I think it's okay if you want to put your microphones on and ask me stuff.
So there are a few questions in the chat that I can just read out loud. One of the questions is, what's your advice on thawing? I don't know if you have different advice on thawing different things.
So like I brought over here a jar of roasted tomatoes from last year. These are the roasted tomatoes I was talking about. And so I came over here yesterday. Like I said, this isn't my kitchen. And I put these in the refrigerator here to thaw out overnight. And yeah, now they're thawed. So you have to kind of, the way I freeze stuff in jars, you have to kind of plan ahead and start it the thawing the night before. I wouldn't put it in a microwave in a jar because it might break. You can thaw it in water. Just you have to be careful. Don't put hot water onto a jar, frozen jar. But the best way is to just take it out the night before. I have thawed stuff at room temperature, but I think if you looked it up, you'd probably read, oh, you shouldn't do that. That you should thaw it in the refrigerator. So I'm going to tell you thaw it in the refrigerator, always. But sometimes I do it at room temperature.
Okay.
Don't sue me.
We have another question, which is, if people are following along right now, should they be peeling whatever vegetables they have?
Yeah. So start. Okay, I'll tell you what I found here in the fridge. So I found a couple of onions. Ordinarily, I would just put white onions in soup. I think maybe out of habit, I really don't think it matters. I found a white and a red onion. So I chopped those. If you have garlic, mince up some garlic. I found a couple of sweet potatoes. So I grabbed those. This one's starting to get some eyes on it, but I'll just cut that off. You can put vegetables that are past their prime in soup. I mean, you don't want to put rotting vegetables in, but like this celery. So I found this in the fridge. Oh, sorry, something floating in the air. I found this celery in the fridge, and it's super, super limp. And I put it in a jar of water, and that's going to perk it up. But that's perfect for soup. I mean, there's nothing wrong with this celery. There's no reason to throw it out. And one soup I made, so I was stranded in Canada for 3.5 months when COVID first hit. I was afraid to come back on a plane, and then the planes were all shut down. There was no Air Canada stopped flying down here. Anyway, I cooked for my mom a lot. She's 88. So I did all the cooking. And the one soup I made that she loved, it had celery, onion, white beans, olive oil, and salt. And that was it. It's really yummy. It doesn't sound like it would be yummy. I put a ton of celery in it and just cannellini beans, these white beans. So I found 3 tomatoes. Like, what else are you gonna do with 3 tomatoes? I mean, I guess you could just eat them, but soup is perfect. So those are going in the soup. I found an apple that it's still edible, but it is kind of, it's kind of old. There's nothing wrong with it, but I'm going to put a little bit in. I'm making a big pot of soup, so I think this much apple in it would be just fine. I found, oh, sorry, no, I brought over. I had some hominy corn. It's delicious. I love this stuff. It's in Biscotti. It's a Mexican dish. These giant kernels. So I soaked some of that last night. Those are going in it. So I don't have that much going in here really. And then I'm going to add water. I should really look through the fridge. There might be other stuff in there that I could throw in. And so I'm going to peel and chop the sweet potatoes. What kind of stuff did people find in their fridge? If you're cooking along, I'm curious. You could put it in the chat or just answer. Oh, and sweet potatoes taste really good with beans, by the way. That's why I thought, that's why I actually like black beans with sweet potatoes, but I couldn't find any, but that's fine. Cannellini beans will be good.
So people have been adding some comments on what they're putting in.
Okay.
Broccoli leaves, cabbage, kale, cauliflower, kale, sweet potatoes, cauliflower stems.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you can eat all that stuff. Cauliflower, like the core and the leaves. You can eat all that stuff. We throw out. This time we've all been taught. We've all been taught. That's how you cook the stuff. You throw out all those parts. Now, while I'm chopping, I'm putting stuff in a pot. So those are onion skins from earlier. And then while my soup cooks, I'm also going to make some broth. And then,
so you have two other questions.
okay.
Debbie asked, what was the name of the item you soaked that is found in Mexican dishes?
Oh, hominy. Hominy. Yeah, it's so good. I bought that at Rainbow Grocery in San Francisco. I don't know, a couple of years ago. It's been in the cupboard for a long time because I haven't been to Rainbow since probably January, and I bought that a long time ago. But it's dehydrated, just like beans, so it's really good. And corn, so I kind of have the three sisters going here. I have sweet potatoes, corn, and green beans. Sorry, not green beans. Cannellini beans. So the three sisters are they're crops that First Peoples grew. I believe it was. I have to ask my sister. She plants them every year. I thought it was sweet potatoes. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. No, it may be a squash, beans, and corn. Anyway, but those all taste really good together. These sweet potatoes. I think it is squash. The three sisters. This is not my vegetable peeler. I don't like this one.
There was a question earlier about how to make gluten-free bread. I don't know if you have any recipes on your blog or tips for how to do that.
So I haven't made gluten-free sourdough bread, but Cultures for Health has recipes on the website, and it's culturesforhealth.com. And they have several gluten-free recipes. They look good. I haven't tried them. They have a gluten-free starter you can buy. I have made a gluten-free starter myself, but I haven't made the bread with it. And to make that, you just do it the same way you'd make a regular, or like a wheat starter. So that information's on my blog for how to make a standard starter. When I made gluten-free, I've done it a couple of times. I've used buckwheat. Yeah, buckwheat. It sounds like it has wheat in it, but it doesn't. Now these peels I'm putting in the compost because I don't know if these sweet potatoes are organic. I'm thinking they aren't. Because like I said, this isn't my kitchen. I just raided stuff. And so when I make this vegetable broth, I like to use organic peels. And because the peels, especially potatoes, the peels are going to have more pesticide in them than the inside of the vegetable. So those guys are just going to the compost. They're going to the worms because I don't have chickens.
Someone actually asked about if you would ever leave the sweet potato peels on. If you knew those were organic, would you leave them on while cooking your soup, or would you only save them for a broth?
Sorry, which type of peels?
Sweet potato peels. Someone specifically asked. So if you knew those sweet potato peels were organic, would you ever leave them on your sweet potato, or would you only peel them to save for a broth?
That's a good question. Huh. Potato peels I just leave on if they're organic. I would try it. Yeah, why? I mean, they're thin little peels, and I have eaten the peels of a roasted sweet potato. I would try it. Maybe try a, you know, I should have, well, except these aren't organic. I think it would be okay.
So I know I'm not the chef, but I've actually made soup with sweet potatoes and left the peel on, and I thought it tasted fine.
Oh, good.
We
Yeah,
have
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, there are additional questions, unless you had more thoughts on peels.
Okay.
The other question is, when adding beans, do you cook them first, or is putting them in dry and cooking a while and then adding the veggies okay?
Oh, yeah. So I've done it both ways. Sometimes I'll have leftover cooked beans in the refrigerator, and so I'll just throw them in. These ones are dry, so the soup's gonna cook for longer. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cook the vegetables a little bit, and then add the water, and then add the beans. And then let it simmer for a long time. If the beans are already cooked, then I would just add them at the end after the vegetables are cooked, kind of near the end, to heat them through. But you can do it either way. I've done it both ways. So when you cook them dry in the soup, then they add, like, they thicken the soup because they've got that that broth is staying in the pot. Whereas when you cook them, you might not add that broth. That broth is good though. Whenever you cook beans, like in a pot or slow cooker or pressure cooker, save that broth because you can add it to soup. I freeze it. Sometimes I cook lentils in it when I make dal. If I have broth left over from cooked beans, I'll use that. And then it makes it thicker and adds flavor. So I find use for everything. This is what I meant, like when I was saying, like just cooking this way, you're more creative. You come up with stuff. Like I never cooked. Can you hear me over the chopping?
I can, yes.
Okay, because it's really loud here in my ear. Yeah, I used to just buy canned beans. I mean, which is fine. The cans are lined with BPA though. I mean, the plastic, you know, that lines the cans has BPA in them. So I like to buy dried beans. But I never used to do that. The beans, they're inexpensive and they taste really good. The beans you cook yourself. And I find the use for the broth, and I find it's a fun way to cook. Okay, almost done with my sweet potatoes. Oh, I'm gonna chop some celery. So, now if you're ready to go, I'll tell you what I'm gonna do next. I'm going to cook an onion in some olive oil, and I'm generous with the olive oil. Or you can use whatever oil you have. I like olive oil. I buy big jugs of it, big glass jugs, and then, oh, I put them away. Well, then you can reuse the jugs. You can fill them with water.
So there are additional questions that have come in. And I'm going to jump to Allie's question because it feels like more immediate. Is there general advice on when to add which vegetables to the soup? So if people have already chopped everything up, do you have like a hierarchy of what to add when, or?
Yeah, thanks for asking. That's a great question. Okay, so I always start with onions and garlic. Unfortunately, I didn't find any garlic here. There's no garlic. I love garlic. So yeah, start with the onions and garlic, and then add the harder vegetables. I'm just gonna use water for this soup, not broth. So I'd add, sorry. Add the harder vegetables first. So sweet potatoes, celery, the raw stuff. Now, if you have something like spinach or kale, stuff like that, greens, add them at the very end. Like after everything's all cooked, then add those. Because the stuff is gonna wilt quickly. For this, let's see, I have tomatoes. I don't have that much for this. Tomatoes and celery. I'm just gonna cook everything at the same time.
Okay.
But the greens, do those at the end.
And what about beans? If you were adding uncooked beans, would you add those at the same time as your vegetables, or?
Well, I would. Like green beans.
Oh no, I mean like legumes that you're adding.
Oh. Okay, if they're uncooked.
Yes.
Like these ones that I have. So I'm gonna do it all. What I do is I saute the vegetables a little bit, and then I'm gonna add the beans. Because otherwise, well, you guys don't wanna like watch me for 2 hours. Yeah, so, okay. I would say cook your beans for a little while and then add your vegetables.
Sounds good. Okay, there are other soup questions asking tips on how you decide what items to group. So deciding what out of what you happen to have should go into your soup, what you should leave for something else because it might be an odd combo. She says, I'm usually a pretty intuitive cook, but don't make a lot of soup. So I personally was surprised to hear you say you were adding apple to the soup. That's not something I would have thought to include.
Yeah.
Can I have a soup?
What to put in.
So I'm just adding a little bit of apple because I'm making a pretty big vat. I have 2 cups of dried beans, and so that's going to make quite a bit of soup. I would be careful with things like beets because they have a really strong flavor. I love beets, and borscht is delicious, but if you don't want your soup to be red, go easy on the beets. And they're also sweet, so it depends on what you're making. But I mean, I love beets, so if I had beets right now with these sweet potatoes, I'd go easy on the beets with the sweet potatoes. Also, the stuff tastes better on the second day. Whatever you make, the flavors meld together. Let me see, what else would you want to go? Kale and collard greens, those those can be bitter when they're raw, but they taste really good in soup. So, and I'm going to add, I found thyme in the cupboard here. So I'm gonna add some dried thyme. Rosemary is also really good. And I have my only 3 tomatoes.
So we have another question, which is, do you ever add frozen vegetables to cooking soup?
Oh,
Like,
yeah, you
only
can
just remembered you had something in the freezer. Is it okay to add that in while frozen?
Oh yeah, it's fine. It'll be fine. If these tomatoes, like these are impossible to get out of the jar if they're still frozen. But if they were, say, green beans or, I don't know, chunks of broccoli that for some reason I blanched and put in the freezer, okay, let's say because you can do that. You can blanch and freeze stuff. It's fine if it's frozen. Sure, you can add that. It's just I couldn't get that out of there if it's frozen. But yeah, that's great. Then you can clear out your freezer too. All right. Well, I have enough chopped. Now I'm going to swing the camera over to the stove, and I have to adjust the light. So, good. Okay. All right. So I have a fairly big pot. You know, maybe I should use the Dutch oven. I'm going to use the Dutch oven because this is, I don't know if this is big enough. All right, here's a nice big Dutch oven. This is my Dutch oven. And I'm going to be generous with the olive oil. That's about 3 tablespoons of olive oil. Oh.
We have a question that just came in that says, what is the ratio of liquids, water or broth, to cut vegetables?
So I'll saute the onion. Sorry, you can't, the lighting is not good. So I'm going to saute the onions and add some thyme. If I had garlic, I would saute that also. And then I'm going to add all my vegetables. Once I have the vegetables and the beans and everything in there, I'll add enough water just to cover the soup. Or sorry, just to cover the vegetables. So it depends on how many vegetables you have in there. I can measure when I do it.
Oh, that would be helpful.
Pardon me?
That would be helpful.
Okay.
Oh, but are you going to measure? I guess it would be helpful if you measure the vegetables that you're putting in and then the liquid that you put on top.
Okay, sure.
Just that way, because I think it sounds like from the question, Allie's looking for a ratio so she can think through it
Okay.
in her own kitchen.
Sure. I'll do that.
Okay.
Okay, well, I better, I can do that right now.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry. Here, I'm grabbing and measuring it up.
Or if it's not too hard, I mean.
Oh no, it's not too hard. It's just, it's easy.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, no, it's just super alive here.
Yeah.
I'm just winging it. Okay, so let me see. You can, I think I have about, oh dear. All right, I'm gonna guess here. I have 4 cups of chopped vegetables. I have another, I'd say 4 cups of onions. And another 2, I have 10 cups. So remember that, 10 cups of vegetables. I have 2 cups of dried beans that I soaked.
So 12 cups total.
Yeah, 12 cups total. This is before I soaked these. It's important, soak your beans. And then I had a cup of hominy.
So now
that's
13.
13 cups. Oh, wait. But then, now these are kind of like liquid. But let's count. Okay. So I will put in, I'm not putting in the whole thing. I'm going to put in like 2 cups.
15 cups.
So what are we up to now?
We're at 15.
Wow. Good thing I got the Dutch oven. 15 cups. I'm just going to add a little bit of apple. So let's say 15 cups.
That's easy for math too.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, now I'm going to add my onions. Ah, oh boy. It's super hot. The Dutch oven's super hot. If I had garlic, I would add the garlic right now. I have this, the Dutch oven holds the heat really well. You don't need to have the heat up as high. So I have it on sort of medium high heat, medium. I'm gonna saute this for like 5 minutes. And like I said, be generous with the olive oil. And then I'm gonna add some thyme. I found some thyme over here. I'm gonna add like, because I'm making kind of a bat, I think I'll add, this is dried thyme, so I don't know, tablespoon. When you cook like this, taste as you go. I didn't mention that, very important. Taste as you go and adjust the seasonings. It was so nice to see other people's kitchens. I love that.
So there's a follow-up question, which is to add to my earlier question about grouping items. I've heard to leave cruciferous veggies out of soup stock because they make it bitter. Do you add those to your stocks? How about when you're making stock as a separate question, how about cruciferous veggies in soup?
So, so when I make my stock, I'll add a little bit of them. Not too much. Mostly my stock has onions, celery, and carrots, I would say. Peels and bits from those things. Maybe a few bits of tomatoes. And then maybe a little bit of cruciferous, but not too much. I'll add it in. I know I've read that too, like you shouldn't add it. I think it's okay if you add small amounts. And then the soup, well, it depends. I mean, if you want to use a small amount, I think it's fine. And if you want to use a large amount, then just use that.
If people were using fresh herbs instead of dry herbs, would they add those now, or do you think later?
Oh, so yeah, I would add them later. I usually add, if I have it, I add rosemary and thyme, and I'll put a whole sprig or 2 in the pot at the end.
Great.
That's usually how I do it. Yeah, that's a good question. You people have really good questions. So my onions are getting soft. And now I'm gonna add some, I don't know if it's been, let's pretend it's been 5 minutes. I don't know how old this thyme is. Oh, it doesn't look that old. Okay. So I'm gonna add, because I'm making a lot, 15 cups of vegetables. And if you have broth, you can add broth. Ooh, when I make soup. So sometimes I make ricotta cheese, and you get a lot of whey left over from that, and save it and put it in soup. If you're not vegan, whey adds a nice tang. And it's a great way to use that up. And then when the soup is done, if you have stale bread, cut it up into cubes and you can throw that in. So in Italy, there's a soup called bribolita. People will make something like minestrone the first night, and they'll use whatever vegetables they have for that. And then the next night, they'll add stale bread, and then you get like a different dish. Out of the same, without making something from scratch. This smells really good. All right, now
We have a comment and a question, unless you're moving on to another step that we should listen to.
okay, no, go ahead.
Okay, so the comment or suggestion is that if you chop garlic 10 minutes before using it, it allows beneficial nutrients to activate more.
Oh.
I didn't know. And then also tearing lettuce a day in advance before using activates a compound as well.
Oh, really? Oh, I didn't know that. Thank you. I know I like to chop my garlic and my onions right before I'm gonna cook. They just seem to be super fresh. I mean, if you want to get a head start, you could chop them the day before you're gonna make your soup or whatever you're gonna cook. And I mean, it does give you some, buys you some time. But I do like it if I chop them right before I'm gonna make the stuff. So maybe that's why. Maybe the flavor and the freshness has something to do with that compound. I don't know. I have no idea. But I'm just I know I like it better if I chop it right before.
Then there's another question that says, is there a way to tell if dry legumes beans are too old before using them?
Huh. I wonder if there's some sort of test. I'd have to look that up. But I do know that when they're old, if you don't soak them, they can cook unevenly. And so some will be hard and some will be soft. And so if you're not sure how old they are, soak them first.
Okay.
But that's a good question, because I don't know how you tell just by looking at them. There might be, with eggs, there's that float test.
Mm-hmm.
Just like with witches in the Middle Ages. If it sinks, if she sank, she was a witch. No, if she sank, she wasn't a witch. And she died. And if she didn't sink, she was a witch, and they burned her. And eggs are similar. I think if it sinks, it's fresh, or if it floats. I have to look it up.
Yeah, I don't remember. There's another suggestion about, someone says if it sinks, it's fresh.
Oh, okay, just like a witch. Okay, it is the same.
Yeah, just like a witch.
Okay, I'll remember that.
Then there's another comment that says they've used whey and bread recipes to sub for water for making high protein bread and to use up the whey from making yogurt.
Yep. Oh yeah, I've got that in my cookbook. I have sourdough tortillas, and I use whey in those. I'm pretty sure. And I also have buns, hamburger buns. And I use whey in those also. Yeah, I mean, it's a great way to use it up, and I think it softens the bread. And yeah, I like doing that. Oh, you can freeze whey also. So after you make ricotta, okay, I gotta add some more vegetables. I'm talking, I'm like that. Okay, now, you might want to add the beans. If you have dried beans, not cooked beans, probably a better idea to add those now. So that's what I'm gonna do. Because one of you asked about that. I think the beans, dried beans first and then the vegetables. So I'm just gonna go over here and rinse these, drain and rinse them.
So another question that just came in whenever you're ready is, have we talked about salt? Which I don't think you have. So when you're done with this next step and you have a little time to kill, if you could talk about your use of salt in the soup and when you add it and how much you decide to use.
Yeah, I now see if I do it this way. Well, that's okay. Okay, so these were 2 cups of cannellini beans that I'd say they doubled in size. So I'm gonna add those. Ah. And now I'm adding water. Okay, now I'm measuring it so that okay, I'm adding, it's much quieter now. I'm adding 6 cups of water so far. Yeah, I said I was gonna do it the other way. I changed my mind. I'm doing beans first. And then I'll just have to explain to you, because these aren't gonna, I'm gonna let these cook for until after we're done here. So we're gonna turn the heat up. I'm gonna let this cook for half an hour. Oh wait, I don't know how to work this thing. I don't, okay, sorry. Actually, okay, so I have my beans in there. We're gonna pretend that half an hour has gone by after a little while. I'll answer some more questions. Are there more questions?
So the question was salt.
Oh, salt.
Broth.
Okay.
Have we talked about salt? That's the
We
question.
have talked about salt. So I add the salt at the end to taste, and I use, when I buy salt at Rainbow, it's from the San Francisco Bay, and Alton Brown says that's the best salt, the stuff from San Francisco Bay. Yep, I didn't know that. My boss asked me one day, she said, what kind of salt do you use? And I told her, she said, Alton Brown says that's the best. So, but I'll use kosher. Pardon me?
From like a health standpoint, from a flavor standpoint?
Oh, no flavor. I imagine. I think she was, yeah, I'm pretty sure she was meant flavor when she told me that. So, I will use kosher salt or table salt if I have it. When I ferment vegetables, I use the stuff from the San Francisco Bay, but I've used all kinds of salt and they're all fine. So, does anybody else have dried beans? Did anybody else put dried beans in their soup? Oh, I see some nodding.
So there's another question that says, if you're adding canned beans at the end, do we add the water and the vegetables now?
Oh, good question. Yes. Okay. Yeah, because there's so many different ways you can do this. Okay, if you have the raw vegetables and you're doing canned beans, add the vegetables now. Add them, swirl them around for a few minutes, get them coated with the oil and the onions and the garlic. And then add water to cover and your beans. And then if you need more water. So you want it, when I make it, I mean, you can, if you want it more water in your soup, you can add more water, but when I make it, I add enough water to cover, and maybe an extra ½ inch or so. And then I'll check it while it's cooking, and if it needs more water, I'll add more water. Oh, and I have to add the hominy. I forgot. This stuff takes a really long time to cook, so I'm putting it at the same time as the beets.
So we have another question which says, I'm adding dry lentils. What's a good water ratio for that?
I do 3 cups of water to 1 cup lentils when I cook them for dal. So why don't you put in 4 cups of water to 1 cup of lentils, because you've got other stuff in there too. And see how, yeah, try that. I think that's a good amount. And then you can report back. Tell us how it looks. Yeah, for people who are adding the vegetables and then cooked beans, if you're doing that, then right, add the vegetables, swirl them around for a few minutes, add the water and cooked beans. I would drain and rinse the beans first. If you need more water, add more. I think you'll be okay. And then you're going to cook your soup for about 20 minutes. Simmer, bring it to, so. There. It's simmering sort of vigorously, but not too vigorously. Oh. Let's see. And then after that 20 minutes, add salt to taste. So this is kind of a big pot. Plus I have beans, dry beans that I think canned ones might have salt in them, the cans. I'm not sure. So start off with less salt. I'm gonna add a couple of tablespoons to this. And then taste it and then see if I want more. Oh, if you have cheese rinds from Parmesan cheese, throw those in. They add a ton of flavor. Oh, I have just a tiny amount of farro, or farro, I don't know, farro, F-A-R-R-O. I have maybe a ¼ cup here. I'm gonna throw that in. That's a great way to use that up. Now this stuff, when you cook it, it takes maybe 20 minutes to make. It's quite chewy, it's really yummy. It's a whole grain. So I'm gonna throw this in now. I forgot I had this. But this is a great way to use up, because where else am I gonna use a ¼ cup of mystery grains? So, sorry, did somebody ask?
We have 2 more questions. One question is, would you ever add dry pasta, or does it get too gummy?
I've had dried pasta. No, I don't think it gets gummy. Oh, the pasta itself. So the next day, if you have something like orzo, I think that's really good. My daughter made some soup a while ago and it had those balls in it. I forget what they're called. That was really good. I don't think it gets too gummy. I mean, the next day, if you have something like, I don't know, rotini or something, I find it does like suck up the liquid, and then the next day you might want to add more liquid to it. I think, yeah, uncooked pasta, I've done that. I'm sure I've done that. But cooked pasta, if you have a little bit of leftover cooked pasta or leftover cooked rice, or if you have leftover cooked chicken, I mean, or meat, add that just to heat it at the end. It doesn't have to cook for hours and hours. I mean, I'm not cooking this for hours and hours, but you know, it really just needs, oh no. Just needs to be heated through. Okay, I'm gonna cook this with the lid on because I have my beans in there. Oh, I still have my apple to cut up. I'm gonna do that when I add the rest of the vegetables.
So there are two more questions now.
Okay.
One is more specific. Okay, can someone say the steps like garlic, onions were first, then start your root vegetables, then add water, how long to simmer, just like a recap of.
Okay, sure. Okay, so I would start with the start with the onions. This is what I usually do. I didn't have garlic today. So heat the olive oil or oil, add the onions and cook them for about 5 minutes. Add the garlic and cook for another minute. You can cook them at the same time and just do them both together, but that's how I usually do it. So I'm looking at the question. Okay, if you have dried beans, I would add the, sorry. I forgot about the herbs. Oh, burning down the house. After the onions and garlic, add dried herbs. So add thyme or, you know, cumin or dried rosemary or whatever, marjoram. Add that, stir it for a minute. Then if you have dried beans, I would add, that you've soaked, I would add those next. And then add water. You want to have, let's see, cover the dried beans by, you know, a little bit. Actually, you're going to add more vegetables. I'm sounding like my mom when I ask her, how do you make your tarts? And she says, over the phone, oh, add this much flour. Like, we're not on Skype. Okay, add your beans, add the water. Let's say cover them by a couple of inches because you are going to add more vegetables also. Let the beans cook for say half an hour. Then add the vegetables. If you need more water, add more water until everything's at least covered. Let that cook for another 15-20 minutes, depending on the type of vegetables you used. If you used all root vegetables, then it's going to take a little bit longer. If you used things like tomatoes and green beans, and I don't know, corn, fresh corn, will take less time. And then if you have spinach or kale, add that in the last 5 minutes of cooking. Now it's done when the beans are cooked and the vegetables are tender. To tell if the beans are cooked, eat 5 of them. Well, take 5 out. If you eat 1 and it's hard, okay, they're not done. Put them back in. If you eat 5 and all 5 are done, they're all, you know, soft and you can eat through them, then the beans are done. And then at that point, add salt. I add a tablespoon. Sorry, no, I'm gonna add a couple of teaspoons. 3 teaspoons in a tablespoon, by the way. Wow, this is really, yeah, so add salt to taste. Throw in cheese rinds early if you have cheese rinds. Add other add-ins you know, to heat through, like cooked rice, cooked grains.
That actually leads to another question that we have. it says, when you have a chance, also wondering about some of the other categories of stuff mentioned in the event info, adding acids like sherry, cider vinegar, etc., and stuff
Right,
like
right.
cheese rinds, grains mention, suggestions for when to add those things in and the proportions. It also says don't want to overcook the grains, I assume.
Right, so we'll add those cooked grains you can add near the end. So when the vegetables and the beans are done, then add the cooked grains because they're already cooked. You're really just going to heat them through. So the other grains, like I added the farro, and I know that that takes at least 20 minutes to cook. So you'd want to put it in, you want to give it enough time to cook. You could put it in at the same time as the vegetables. I could have done that. Sorry, and then, oh right, acid, that's very important. Thank you for asking that. Yeah, add a little bit of vinegar at the end along with the salt to taste. So it depends on how much you're making. Start with, so a big pot like this, I'm gonna start with like a couple of teaspoons of vinegar, or you could use lemon juice or lime juice, but vinegar makes a huge difference in soup. Red wine vinegar, if you have red wine vinegar, I think that's the best. I make vinegar out of kombucha, you know, I'll just let it go until it's vinegar. Or I make scrap vinegar, I showed in the presentation. So I'll just add that. But if you have red wine vinegar, add red wine vinegar. Balsamic isn't, I don't like it as much, but yeah, red wine. Add it when you add the salt at the end. And then taste it. Yeah, thank you for asking about the vinegar.
And then
and cheese rinds.
Cheese rinds?
Yeah, put those in early because you're making like a broth out of them. If you have a bunch of cheese rinds, you can make cheese rind broth. So you put them in a pot with water and you simmer it for, I'm not sure how long. Simmer for what, like maybe half an hour, an hour? Anyway, you get this yummy cheesy broth. Always save, if you buy Parmesan cheese or other cheese with hard rinds, save those. They add, like one rind to this big pot adds a noticeable amount of flavor, or it's really good. Any other questions?
Yes, so
is that, Zoe, is that okay, the summary I gave? I kind of went all over the place. I can go over it again. So the fresh herbs at the very end. Oh, so yeah, I add the fresh herbs when I add the, no, not the very end. Add them with the, I'd add them with the vegetables. Like, so I don't have rosemary with me, rosemary and thyme, but I love putting a couple of sprigs in there of rosemary. Actually, yeah, put them in early. Put them in when you add the water. And then before you eat it, you'll just have the little woody stems. Just pull that out. If you want to, you can strip it and you can chop it, the rosemary, if you don't want big pieces of it. Thyme you don't really need to because, you know, they're just little pieces of thyme. But yeah, so add that when you add the liquid, because whether you're adding the raw beans, the soaked beans, whether you're adding the soaked beans first, because, or whether you're adding canned beans later, if you get those in when you add the water, it's going to flavor the the vegetables or it's going to flavor the beans. So I don't know what I say in my cookbook, because I do have ribollita in the cookbook, and I put in fresh rosemary and fresh thyme. And I'd have to look up exactly when I say to put those in. I'm guessing I said put it in when you add the liquid. I have my sourdough bread recipe memorized with all 27 steps, but I can't remember how I said to make the ribollita. All right, someone asked Zoe when to add the protein or cooked grains. So the protein, if you have meat or chicken, I'd add that near the end just to heat it through. Because you don't want to, you wouldn't want to have it in there as long as, say, the beans, because there's no need to simmer already cooked meat for a long time. And then it might become tough. Let's see. Oh wow, this is really simmering away. Here, I will show you. There it is. It smells really good. All right, I'm going to, oh no, sorry, my thing sank down a little bit. All right, I'm going to say that that's been, I'm going to say those beans have cooked half an hour. We've gone into a time machine. And I'm going to add my vegetables. And I already added 6 cups of water, so now we'll see how much more water I need for this. And I may need even more as it cooks. It's a lot of vegetables. And I'm going to add a couple of cups of my roasted tomatoes. These are from last summer. They're so good. So I'm adding 2 cups of that. And there's quite a bit of liquid in there already. Okay, so I need to add more water. I'm gonna add another, here, I'll show you. So I have 15 cups of things in there. And they're poking through the liquid, so I need more water in there. So I'm gonna add, let's say 3 cups. So that's 9 cups of liquid that I've added for 15 cups of vegetables and beans, mostly vegetables and beans. So let's add 3 more cups. I may even want more. Oh, that's good. Also, my pot won't hold anymore. There it is. So now, I'm gonna let that simmer for another 20 minutes. Oh, but I haven't put the apple in yet. I'm gonna put like, just a few chunks of this. Let's see. I'm going to peel it. So I don't know if this is organic or not. I'm thinking no. So I'm just gonna compost these peels also. My daughter, who's working on the farm, she said the chickens go wild for apples. Apple peels and apple cores. It's a real treat. And the pigs too, they have pigs. The pigs really like apples. But I don't have any animals, so I'm just going to compost these. hope there's red wine vinegar in here. Okay, so I probably shouldn't. Don't try this at home. I'm gonna cut it on a cutting board. Here I am back at my cutting board. Okay. Ordinarily, when it's not COVID, I have a sous chef. I have someone to help me. Anyway, I'm just gonna add like, let's say, I don't know, a cup of chopped apple. That's all. And I'll eat the rest of the apple. It seems fine. It just, you know how apples sometimes they get just a little tiny bit soft, like they're not super, super hard. That's all that's happened to this apple. Okay. And I've added that. And then I'm not going to put the salt in. I'm going to wait for it to cook. You could put it in now. But this is a lot of soup. Oh, and then when it's all done, if you have more than you can eat, you can freeze it. So I'm going to cook that for another 20 minutes. I'm going to turn up the heat, bring it to a simmer. Oh, here, I'll stand here. Okay, I'll stop moving that. Oh, let's see, so I'm going to add, okay, if using canned beans, should we use the liquid in the cans plus the beans or just the rinsed beans? That's a good question. It's up to you, I guess. If you have chickpeas, you can make that aquafaba. I know people love that. So I guess you could add it. You could add the liquid from the beans. Okay, I take that back about rinsing them. I haven't made this with canned beans in a long time. Yeah, why not just use the liquid? It will add some flavor and it will thicken it. We'll thicken up the soup. Oh, yay, thank you, Anna. The 4-to-1 ratio worked great. Good, good. Does anybody else have questions? Do your kitchens smell good? This is so much soup. So another way to reduce food waste is to be less picky. I think, you know, the cook is less picky. I don't mind eating leftovers. I don't have to have a different meal every day. I can eat, you know, I can eat lots of soup and I can freeze it to eat it later. But yeah, we can train our diners to be less picky. I think involving them in the kitchen, so involving kids in the cooking, then they might be less picky. You know, if you, oh, my Dutch oven, it's 6 3/4 quarts. It's big. I use it for sourdough bread and for vats of soup. I'm so glad I didn't use that smaller pot. There's no way, you know, the vegetables, they didn't look like that much while I was chopping them. All I put were a couple of sweet potatoes, a bit of celery, 3 pieces of celery, 2 onions, a couple of cups of roasted tomatoes, which is a lot of fresh tomatoes. That would be like 4 cups chopped fresh tomatoes. But still, like it really wasn't that much food. And I feel like, this is blasphemous, but I feel like I'm feeding the 5,000 with the fish and the loaves. Like that wasn't that much. This is a ton of soup. So I'm happy. And now yeah, I'll leave most of this here for the owner of the house. and I'll take some with me. Any other questions? Oh, it's 12:31. Does anybody? No? Oh, Rochelle Lent? You've, yeah, that's, I have a blog. Oh, you were looking for a recipe. Oh, I see. And it was on my blog. Oh, that's good. Yeah, my book's out. I'm going to have a book cover reveal. It's supposed to be on September 30th, but we'll see because, so I have a Canadian edition and an American edition, and there are 2 covers. So we're trying to coordinate it at the same time. So it's supposed to be at the end of the month. Anyway, it'll be soon. So it's exciting. It's got lots of tips and tricks and recipes and, you know. So, well, anything else? Oh, thank you, Debbie. Well, thank you all for coming. I hope that was helpful. This is different from my in-person things, but I hope it helps. I think it's fun doing these. It's, you know, at least we can hang out on Zoom. Thank God for Zoom.
Yeah, well, thank you for your wonderful presentation and the cooking workshop, and thank you to everyone who got online and participated. And I think we're actually going to be posting this on the City of Dublin website. So if you wanted to do it again with different vegetables or different ingredients and kind of re-follow along, that will be an opportunity. Or if you thought, oh, I learned a lot of great things and you want to share it with your friends, it'll be available for them to enjoy as well. So thank you, everyone.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Rebecca, and thank you all for coming. And I know some of you, it's late where you are. So we have an international audience. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.